David, there's a lot of discussion about income inequality. If we accept that it's a problem, how can we actually fix it? Okay, this is a good question. Let's not debate whether income inequality is a problem. Let's accept that it is, and that's not what this segment is about. We can talk about whether it's a problem in another segment. I believe that it is, and I've outlined why many times. The most important fact to realize about fixing income inequality is that we don't need to come up with anything new. We have essentially all the ideas we need to deal with income inequality. Now, to be very clear, I don't believe that we need perfect distribution of income. Perfect distribution, equality of outcome, so to speak, is not naturally occurring anywhere. I don't believe it would be good to force it. I'm not a socialist. I don't believe there would be any reasonable expectation that everybody has the same amount of money. What I do think as a social democrat, though, is the bottom should be lifted. There should be a safety net that says we're not going to allow people to fall below this level. And then at the top, you should have more restrictions about, okay, if we say billionaires are okay, are multi-billionaires, turbo billionaires, at what point do we want to be saying now is when you've got to really be redistributing? It's a gray area. Different people would put it at a different spot. We have all of the different tools, but the problem is getting the right combination. So as an example, should the minimum wage be higher than it is right now? Of course. Is a $15 minimum wage nationally going to solve the problem of inequality? No. We need a higher minimum wage. Exactly what it should be probably depends on the state that we're in. But a $15 minimum wage isn't even a living wage in many states based on cost of living. So do we need to raise the minimum wage? Yes. There will be people who come in and say, well, if a higher minimum wage is better, why not just make it $200 an hour? That's not an equilibrium wage anywhere. And that's a red herring. Don't fall for it. Do we need a more robust social service system funded by taxes on the very, very rich, but that includes financial transactions and some of these other ideas? Yeah, we've got the tools. We know what it would look like. There's just no political will to do it right now. Do we need better educational access regardless of income? Because one of the great equalizers is education. And unfortunately, in our society, yes, there are scholarships. Yes, we know about all that stuff. But the reality is there is very low income mobility in the United States. And part of that is because there is not widespread good education that is accessible to people who start off in an economically disadvantaged position. Trade is part of it. You know, Trump talks about trade. Some trade things can be bad for the middle class. I'll concede that. You've got to look at trade. We can look at things like universal basic income or a value added tax, and there's pros and cons to all of these. My point is there are no new tools that are necessary to deal with income inequality, but we have to get away from do nothing and let the markets handle it because we know that doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. I'm fine as a social democrat letting markets work to direct resources in many industries. As I've said before, I don't need the government making all the cell phones or making all the airplanes, but I sure as hell want the government involved in regulating those industries, and well-regulated markets where private industry is manufacturing stuff, I'm fine with. Certain areas need to be taken out of that. Healthcare, education. You could argue that some basic level of housing should be taken out of that. It's a debate in the gray area, but we've got all the tools. We need to figure out how to put them together in the right proportions. Send in your questions for next week's audience questions through our website, davidpakman.com. We have a great bonus show for you today. And remember that on August 23rd, the 15th anniversary of the David Pakman Show, we will be doing a one-day huge membership special. It will be based on the theme of 15 years. And you can be notified of it by jumping on our free newsletter at davidpakman.com.